Okay, so let's move on. So we'll just discuss the certification process, and then show you, re provide you the key requirements, and also do some certification error correction demo. So in a perfect world, this is the simple flow of things with regards to the certification process. So you, as the LA, submit all your records to CalPads, and then even though you have all your records submitted with zero errors, chances are you might still get certification errors because the validation for cert errors is different with compared to the submission errors. Okay, so and then of course, if you have any anomalies, you need to correct those. Starting this year, the anomaly percentage is now 1%. So in prior years, anyone with anomalies above 2% can't certify because of Cert 40. Now that has been cut down further into 1%. So you really have to tighten up on your CCE corrections as well as mid corrections to be able to certify. And then once all of the errors are gone, at least the fatal errors, um, you can now review your reports. And then if you believe that the reports are accurate, you then click on the LA approve button, which then signals, which then sends an email notification to your SELPA. It basically sends a notification to you and to your SELPA stating that you click on the LA approve button. So your SELPA will then receive that notification. You'll then review your SELPA, I mean your SPED report 16.1 to 16.6. If all the counts are good, they then approve. Essentially, two green check marks. If the SELPA approves, then you're certified. Then you also get a notification that your SELPA approved um, your data, your report. However, more often than not, there are inaccuracies in your data, or maybe your SELPA does not want to approve it because they're questioning some information or some data elements, or the counts. Then they disapprove, and then you have to go back and update your information. So, but this is the simple process, and this is what we basically want you guys to experience. So the cleaner the data coming in, the less complicated your certification process is. And so in the certification process, there are three conditions that you have to meet to be able to review the reports and at least approve your report. So you have to have zero fatal errors. The anomaly rate should be 1%. You should be able to see that in the anomalies. So for first-time users, first-time LEA CalPads users, to certify, you have to go to certification status. You have to indicate the academic year. Actually, this is there by default, but you have to, if you don't fill this out, it should, if you click on search, it should still show you the results. But if you filter for just a specific submission, then that's also a good thing. Once you've searched, you should be able to see at least the summary of your certification status. So again, anomaly should be 1% or lower, and then zero fatal errors, and then you review your aggregate reports. Okay, so I'm now on the CalPAS homepage. So I go to certification status, um, and I click on that. So as I mentioned earlier, you have the option to filter for the actual submission, or just click on search and it should bring this up. So since we're doing tests, everything is available for us right now. But for you guys, you should only see FALL1 if you click on that. So you have to resolve anomalies. So gladly, we don't have any CCEs or mids. So again, anomalies will only mids or mids and CCs account for your anomalies, so you have to correct those. To correct those, you have to go to online maintenance, anomalies management, and click on these options here. Maintain multiple identifier to see any CCEs or any mids or CCEs. But since we don't have any, because this is a test environment, yeah, we don't have one this year. Oh, we have one. Okay. So, and then we have a CCE. So, for the mid and CCE, for anomalies, this is the reporting period that's being considered. Okay. So I guess this is the test isn't working yet. So let's move back here. So go back to FALL1.
But while we're mentioning anomalies,
Mm-hmm.
one, the anomalies do trigger an error, right? A fatal error, Cert 40. And Kyron's mentioned that it's 1%. And so if you're new, or if you only did it a couple times, the anomaly percentage formerly was 2%. So they cut it in half. And so mids and CCE are the two of the three anomalies. Those are the ones that get factored. Mids are when the student has multiple identifiers, and Kyron usually has a training that he does in October where he talks about resolving these anomalies. But the important thing is that I want to convey is the mids are you control those. Those can be resolved by you. And so if you're resolving your errors and you're trying to get to below the 1% threshold, that's 1% of your enrollment count, focus on the mids and then the CCEs, because a lot of times the CCEs are just overlapping enrollments as students were pre-enrolled and the district that enrolled them hasn't updated CalPads to show that they're not there yet. And that requires sometimes collaboration between you and another LEA, where the mids often are just something that you can resolve on your own. You don't have to collaborate, and you know, you just want to make sure that you get under that 1% threshold.
And then generally, the snapshot normally is available for LEAs on or a day after census, which is October 7 or October 8. So that could be the reason why you don't have any snapshots yet for everyone. But if they did turn on the snapshots earlier and you don't have any, then you probably have to submit data first to be included on the snapshot. So yeah. Okay, so now we have the certification details page. When I click on FALL1, it gives me the sections here. So here is a summary of your current revision. Okay, so this is just revised and certified because this is, I haven't made any changes yet. I haven't submitted this for approval for your SELPA. I didn't approve any yet because I have total error. So I only have one revision status. Down the road, you may have multiple ones. Let's say if you want to freeze this right now, if you have 0 errors and you want to freeze this version, you can always check in review status, and then this version of the snapshot will be frozen for you, including the reports, including any of the certification fatal summaries. And then once you post a new file or post a record, CalPAS will generate a new revision for you. And then you will have two versions here. You'll have a revised uncertified and in review uncertified. Okay. So if you want to check a newer snapshot revision, just switch to revised uncertified. And you also have to check the revision create date if you're looking at the most updated version. So let's go to this. So I can't certify yet because I have 48 total errors. I have 48 errors in CalPad. So I have to go and look at what are the errors. So I have Cert 1, Cert 4, 67, 113, 146, and 165. Okay, so all the cert errors basically trigger based on the business rules, the conditions, the requirements. If the requirements have not been met, based on the students' data that you reported in CalPAS. So for example, you have Cert 67. It appears we haven't submitted any ELAS status for 20 students. For race and ethnicity, we haven't submitted the synth record of the student. And then for Cert 146, we didn't report a LIP program for an EL student. And then Cert 165 this year is new. It says invalid EL English language acquisition status code for an EL student. So for Cert, we will discuss each of these errors. So let's start with Cert 1. So Cert 1, enrollment data missing for expected open school. So if you get a Cert 1 and you have students enrolled, then by all means submit those their enrollments and any qualifying data. If not, if the school is triggering a Cert 1 and the school isn't operating this year, just send in a service ticket so that requesting that the school be taken out from the expected schools table so that it won't trigger a Cert 1. So for any schools that are not operating this year, just for you guys to be proactive, send in a service ticket stating that the school won't operate. That way, when we have our certification process and you don't have any data to report, this won't trigger for those schools. Now for Cert 4, this triggers throughout the year in different submissions. It's just stating that you guys, the LA did not submit the race and ethnicity data of the student. So let's just do one right now. So if I click on show, the system brings me down here, and then this allows me to just click on the SSID. So I right click, that way I don't have to be going back and forth to this actual page. I right click and open it in new tab. So this is for student avocado chestnut or chestnut avocado. So looking at this student, you see that the student has an enrollment, and then the race and ethnicity is in the demographic section. You'll notice that this does not have any information for race code. So more often than not, we have not submitted the synth record, have not posted the synth for the student. Although when you submit a SENR record and some of the students' information like gender, birth date, and birth country are included on the SENR, and so it populates part of the demographic information. However, you have to report this information. So click on open. If you're just doing this manually online, you can just click on open and then just make the corrections. So you can always say Hispanic ethnicity indicator. Yes, let's say Hispanic. Race code missing indicator, no. Ethnicity missing indicator, no. And then I would say white. And then you also have the option to add additional race codes here. Then you'll be required to provide parent guardian information. So if you don't want, if the parent didn't include any, put decline to state. Now, if it's not high school, where does what subcategory or subgroup will this student be included in? If I put a not high school graduate. Okay, I validate. That's correct. Francine got that right, said. So I post, and
So
that should clear the error.
Kelly and Francine said right, socially
Yes.
economically disadvantaged. And the reason why Kyron asked that question is he wanted to emphasize again the two different definitions. You have your disadvantaged students that often are included with your LCFF count, that's report 1.17. And then on reports 1.1 and 1.2, these are federal reports. you have socio-economically disadvantaged, and you can have a student that has, that you don't generally consider to be economically disadvantaged, but if that parent ed level is indicated as 14, not a high school graduate, they're going to be in that count. And so your counts can differ. And so that's why he wanted to address that is we often see questions, why does report 1.1 and
One.
1.2
Yeah.
not match 1.17? It's often those additional students that are added to the subgroup because of the parent ed level and the difference between the socioeconomically disadvantaged not automatically counting EL students.
Okay. Thank you, Nate. So that's how to resolve a Cert 4. I'm pretty sure for those seasoned CalPads warriors out there, this is easy peasy for you. Now we have Cert 67. So for Cert 67, again, I click on Show. It's just stating that you haven't submitted a SIGA record, or maybe the SIGA record is there. It's just that the status date is after census day. Okay, so again, census day is important when determining, when reporting students and also analyzing reports and determining errors. So I right click and it brings me to avocado chestnut again. So here we then go to student English language acquisition. So obviously we haven't submitted the SIGA record for this student. That's why it's getting a Cert 67. So I'm just demoing this online just to show you how to make the corrections. If you're just, down the road, if you're just correcting a few errors left and don't want to resubmit an entire file, you can just do that here in CalPads, manually in CalPads. You can do that for the SCNR, SINF, SPRG, and SIGA. However, you can't do that for the SPED and SSRV. Okay. So again, make sure it's before census day, and this year's census day is October 7. So let's just say this guy, let's put 10-6, and then this guy could be TBD, and then primary language Spanish, and then I validate. So notice here in your batch files, you don't have a correction reason code. The correction reason code is only available in online maintenance. And the reason behind that is that you only report, if you really need to make corrections that is out of sequence, then you have to do it manually online in CalPads and indicate a correction reason code if needed. If not, let's say this is just a TBD, I can always just validate and CalPads will allow me to post this record, which I want. That way we have Cert 67s to demo down the road. It says here, English language status start date greater than the current system date. Oh yeah, because this is TBD. Okay, let's see here. You can't do a future date for this. So what's today's date?
16.
September 16. There you go. So again, you can't do a future date for the SILA. There you go. So there you go. So that's for Cert 67. Now let's move on to the next one, Cert 113. It's stating here that the student is missing the student initial US school enrollment date. So again, I click on show. And then for those who are new to CalPads and are wondering, how do you basically determine this stuff? How are you able to know that that is the key element there? When correcting data, either through batch file, you get your submission errors, or through certification errors, always consult the CalPads error list. The most updated version of the error list is here at the bottom of CalPads. You may have the system documentation bookmark, the CDE version. However, sometimes that's not the most current version. So always go to this version of the error list. So for Cert 113, it's just stating that the US initial enrollment date is missing. So The reason why this is an error is because of something in the error list that we will look at. So in the error list, if you right click on this arrow here, it gives you, okay, let me just enable that first. I'm sorry. Rather than, click on this one at a time, just right click, it brings this up, this model, and then just go to FALL1. Okay. So what was our error? Cert 113. So we can just filter as well for that particular error. Can you guys see the screen? Is it too small? So Cert 113 is stating that we need the initial US school enrollment date because this student was reported as an EL. So for due to some federal requirement, um, this is required for students who are EL and yeah, who are EL. Okay,
So
so yes, Nate.
um, while you have this up and you're pointing out the requirements, it's a good time to explain the difference between submission errors and certification errors. When you're submitting your files, um, when we talk about submitting the student enrollment, then the student information, then the student program, then the CELA, and you resolve those errors and everything is fine, and then you come check your certification status, you have errors, it's because CalPADS is looking at all the data that you submitted in the ODS. The data can be correct as it came in, but now it's looking at the different fields and seeing if there's any discrepancy. And Kyron mentioned there's a federal requirement that the ELs have the initial US initial start date reported. Well, here's the problem, and the reason why Cert 113 is so prevalent of an error. In the sequence, you normally submit either student information prior to submitting the CELA, or in this year, prior to your LPAC results coming. And so it's not a required field in the student information file to populate. So it may not be populated, it may be blank. And then your LPAC results come back and the student's now an English learner. And that's all English learners, whether they're foreign born or US born, you're going to get a Cert 113 saying we need this data now. And so it's a cross-field conditional validation, and that's why you can submit all your files, have no errors, and then have to resolve more errors because it's a different set of rules, it's a different set of validations on the certification status screen. But that, that answers two questions. One, why that was a particular error that we chose to demonstrate. And then another often question is people want to know, because it's sometimes frustrating to complete your submission, want to go look at your reports and realize you have errors to resolve before you should do that. Thank you, Kyron.
So anyway, for the synth, if you look at the PowerPoint presentation, it looks at the US initial enrollment start date for the EL. So that's missing. So where do you go for that information? What particular fields you have to look at? So let's just go back to the certification error. So the fields validated, that's basically, these are the fields that CalPAS look at to see if there's a if it for CalPAS to trigger an error. So notice that this has different numbers. One corresponds to the first file type in CalPAS, which is the SCNR. Now 2 is your SINF, and 12 is your CELA. So so that is indicated in the CalPAS file specifications form or spreadsheet. So let's go there. So if I go to the bottom, I guess it's not here. So um, let's just go to the CalPAS help, and then we go to the user manual. Okay, so because in the user manual, it has that section here for reference, and it has a section for the CFS here. So let's say CFS is this one. So in the CFS, you have here the different fields or the file types. Okay, so
Test is back, by the way.
it's back. Okay. Let's see. So you have here, notice that for each file type, you have the numbers here. So this is basically your guide to determine what file type field to look at. Okay. Okay, let's go back there to test. Okay, so we have Jimmy Jones. So Jimmy Jones was reported as an EL. Okay, this student is in EL. And then now, and that's why it's triggering a Cert 113. So we go to demographics. We go to the record that overlaps census day and look at the initial US enrollment date. Again, we scroll at the bottom and where is that? Oh, here it is. So that's the date you have to populate. So it could be a date in the prior years. If the student is already in high school, then go back to when the initial US enrollment was. Okay. Then choose that, validate post, and then wait for a new snapshot to clear the error. Okay. So there's a new one this year, Cert 146, language instruction for an English learner. In prior years, last year it was just a warning, but this year it's now a fatal, so it forces LEAs to report a LIP program for an EL student. Okay, so I guess this is for the same student, Jimmy Jones. Yeah, 20018. 0018. Okay, so for the LIP, just go to the student detail and submit those programs here. However, you can always just do that in your SIS, update your SIS, extract the SPRGs for LIPs, and make sure that the LIP program overlaps census day. Okay, just add new record. And then program, depending on the LIP program, you can select any of this. So let's just say 303, validate, and then post. And then for the LIP, you can report different LIP program records for students. You're not limited to reporting one LIP program. So you can report multiple programs for a student. Okay, so the next one is Cert 165. This is new this year, and this involves students who are 22 years old and who are still EL students. So if you attended the data population training, we now have a new code, LIP SILA status code of ADEL. ADEL is specific for students who are 22 years old or older and who primary language is not English. So let's say this student 0018, I guess it's the same one. So for this student was reported as EL but never move up or never reclassified as proficient, and he was still at school and he turned 22. The moment a student turns 22 and a snapshot runs and the student is EL, it will trigger a Cert 165. Okay, to correct that, just add a new record and report the student as a DEL. You can report that in your SIS and then submit a new SIGA file or just do that here. Okay, 916, Adele. We don't need a correction code because it follows the correct sequence. And then Spanish, I validate, and that should post. So be aware of this error. If you have students who are 21 and older who are EL, chances are in the middle of the year, you might get this error. Okay. So just post and that should correct the error. So that's how to correct certification errors. Did we have any questions? Oh, Adele, that's specific for the Adele, as I mentioned, is for students who are KN to 12. Grades KN to 12 who are 22 years old and older and who were determined to to have a primary language not equal to EO or sign language. Okay, so unfortunately, you can't report a TBD for a student who is 22. You can't report an EL. You have to report an ADEL. If a student who is RFEP or IFEP and turned 22, that's fine. It won't trigger any errors. We only want a TBD who is a TBD status or EL. If those are the statuses of those students who are 22, it will trigger a Cert 165. So once all of this has been corrected, it should clear up and um, wait for a new snapshot. And then once a new snapshot is available based on the revision create date and you have 0 errors, then you can now go and review the reports. So these are the aggregate reports that you need to review. Once you reviewed all of this, you should have a tiny box here. Okay, so I go to FALL1. Well, you reviewed all the reports. Okay, thank you for that, Nate. Now, I have here this box here. Sometimes the reason why you can click on this or you don't see this is because you haven't reviewed everything or you have errors that you have to resolve. Okay, if all of those criteria were met, 0 fatal errors, below 1% anomaly, and you reviewed all the reports, you should be able to see this box. So you need to check this box and sign your life away and then click on LAA approve. Okay, do you want me to do this?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
See
let
what
me do that.
happens.
So now, once I do LA approve, an email notification will be sent out to county charter. Okay, and then now you see an LA approve, right? Now, this is the only version you have right now. However, if you make additional changes later on and you're still LA approved, a new revision will come out once a new snapshot is generated for you. Okay, so that's basically on the LA level side. And then later on, the SELPA will then look at the reports and then be able to approve their end of the certification. Once you have 2 approved buttons checked, then you're certified for FALL1. Okay, so where are we on the? Yeah. Oh, you're
And
now the SELPA. Okay.
right, and so this is the only way to show you what the SELPA sees. And the SELPA will go to certification details. They'll filter for the FALL1 snapshot just like you will. And then all the LEAs are listed for them. And you can see this particular SELPA has so many because there are a lot of individual charter schools. But this is why the onus is on you to certify or approve your data soon, is because the SELPA has quite a lot of reports to review as well, as you can see. And so I picked this particular SELPA because I think it's here, and you can see that status is now LEA approved. This tells the SELPA that they need to now look at the reports for this particular LEA to approve it. Everyone else is in revised uncertified, and let me get this to go faster. Everybody else is in revised uncertified, and so the SELPA has really no work to do. When you become LEA approved, you're telling the SELPA to go look at that set of reports, and then generally their workflow, they'd be looking at reports for students with disabilities, right? And they would look at the report, and if they're coming through here to give you an indication of what's required of the SELPA, or if the SELPA has to filter for LEA approved. So one of the problems at the end of year 4 is LEAs were making corrections because the SELPAs had concern about end of year 3 or end of year 4, and they're looking at the revised uncertified report. But the SELPA by default is always going to be looking for approved, because that's telling them I'm done. And if you don't ever modify, if you have one that's a SELPA disapproved, and you're working on your revised and certified, you have to be sure they know what version of the report to look for. But to make it easy on them, you can go to LEA approved. You can approve your revision rather than keeping it revised and certified. And that will tell the SELPA, this is what I want you to look for. It makes it simple on them. And so, you know, there's 16 of these districts that wait for the deadline. You're going to be in a holding pattern, right? You're going to be on the runway. There is no takeoff for you to certify, right? Because you're waiting on someone to do all this manual work in CalPaths, and you know how slow it is for you. So, you know, it's like beating a dead horse or whatever they say. I know we always tell you to try to certify, and it's in large part not up to what you're doing. I understand that, but if there's at all any way to pull in people to help facilitate the process, it's in your best interest. But you know, this is what the SELPA would be looking at. They'd have to run each report for each LEA, and it could be, I don't know how many, you know, it's just too many. I don't know how many different LEAs they have to look at, but that would be the requirement. And then hopefully this doesn't take long. Because we have a state account, we can't show you. There's also 2 more fields that allows the SELPA to either check each individual LEA, and then at the bottom they can approve it all at once, or there's a physical button where they can approve them one at a time. So like in this case, New Jerusalem would probably just be approved because they certified, and all the other LEAs are in revised and certified. And unfortunately, there's a slide that shows the SELPA view. We couldn't mock it up for training as I had hoped, but you know, just to give you a perspective of the SELPA and kind of like the communication that's needed, because they're generally by default are looking at your LEA approved versions. If you're working on a revised and certified version, you have to, you know, specifically and explicitly let them know that. Just as a point, you know,